Welcome to day 14, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you. And today we have new neural pathways. I thought I would just share a couple of the analogies that I use with clients when it comes to explaining really how we're trying to facilitate change in behaviour, how we're trying to change things like automatic negative thinking, how we might be trying to change things in terms of or changing a previously held automatic response. I'll just put this over here a little bit. There we go. So the first one that I use, and I just realized I forgot my prop, but we'll use the pens. Usually I use this with a coffee cup or a glass of water. We always offer our clients a glass of water or something like that for the sessions, and most of them will have that, or their water bottle, but something like that. And we get them to hold it like they're going to have a drink. So if you're right-handed, they might be holding it like this, and I say, okay, so now have a drink with your coffee cup, and they have a drink. And I ask them how difficult that was. Hopefully it's not very difficult. It's maybe a 1 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. You have to, pay a little bit of attention or you spill it down your front, but it shouldn't be taking too much effort to drink your cup of coffee with your dominant hand. Then I ask them to swap it to their other hand and do the same thing, and just notice and just pay attention. And this is using those mindfulness components that we talked about yesterday, of just noticing what's different, noticing how it feels just to hold the cup in that hand, noticing how it feels to do the same action but with a different hand. And then I talk about the discomfort that might cause. And for some people, they might still say, oh no, that's still pretty easy. That's like a 4 or something like that. But there will be a difference. They will notice it feels different. And that's what I say, that feeling of pushback, that feeling of, I don't want to be holding it in that hand, of just slight discomfort. That feeling is what we're going for when we're trying to create new pathways, because over here is comfort, and comfort hasn't been working well for us for whatever reason. Over here it's a little bit of discomfort to start with, but with repetition it will get easier and easier till the point where you don't notice. The really nice thing about the coffee cup one is that I don't tell them to swap hands back. We just start talking about the neural pathways and what the analogy means and all of this kind of thing. And it's always really, really, really interesting to see how quickly that ends up back in this hand without them even noticing it. And that's a really nice time as well to come back to what just happened. Were you even consciously aware that it switched back to this hand? When we talk about automatic thoughts, automatic behaviors, automatic reactions, schema responses, we're talking about something that is almost outside our conscious awareness. It's been happening for so often. So the coffee cup is just a really, really nice little way of demonstrating that. And I would highly encourage you to try that one for yourself, because it really is quite funny. It's just changing up things. And I'm fairly ambidextrous, and I still find it, because I usually drink with that hand, but I still find it quite strange to go with that hand. You might get them to try brushing their teeth with the other hand, for example. Just changing up things ever so slightly. You might want to get them to try, if there's someone who always puts sock, shoe, shoe, get them to put sock, shoe, or vice versa. If they always do the bunny ears when they're tying up their laces, get them to do around and over. Just little changes to just get them really good at noticing what it feels like when a new pathway is trying to be built, trying to be developed. So that's the little introduction that I give. And I say, if we're doing this right, you should start to notice more and more of this as you start to use that new pathway more and more. I'll extend it and talk about motivation as well. So sitting here in my office and I've just asked you to swap hands, the motivation isn't massively high. There's no reward for drinking with the other hand. But if I said, when you come in next week, I want you to only drink coffee with your left hand, and if you're able to do that, I'll give you $1 million, you would get very comfortable with this very quickly. If you broke your right arm and you had no other way to get your caffeine than by using your left hand, you would get very, very good at this relatively quickly as well. So sometimes we use that to open up a conversation around motivations and values. What's the thing that's going to make that discomfort, that mild discomfort, worth it? Then I use this example because I think it's always nice if you, and this actually is an example from my own life, but I think it is nice if you can, whenever you're using these examples or analogies, if you can come up with something from your own life that's okay to share, or when you tell it as if it's happening in your own life. Maybe disguise some of the bits and pieces, but I think the clients tend to have a better buy-in to the story if it's directly related to someone that they know, and that could be you. So this is an example of old and new pathways and weighing up the pros and cons of using those old versus new pathways. So I use it as we used to live in Noble Park, which was here. And for Noble Park, you had, if you wanted to get to the airport, you had the Monash. Not long after we moved in, you had the Eastlink. And they were roughly about the same distance from Noble Park. But the Eastlink didn't finish being built until we'd already been in Noble Park for a couple of years. So we were much more used to using the Monash. That was just what we were more familiar with. Then come to a few years later. We're much more used to it. Let's try that again. So this pathway was well worn. This pathway was really strong, really well developed, really familiar, really quite comfortable. Okay. Then a few years later, we moved out to Ferntree Gully, which is sort of out here. And suddenly the Eastlink became much more the viable option, especially this part of it. But one year, quite a few years ago now, sadly, it's been a while, we were coming back from overseas. We had had a whole bunch of delays and we're exhausted because we had been traveling for like 36 hours. We hadn't slept in 24 hours. And the only reason that we didn't decide to just stay at the airport hotel or something that night was our pet sitter was leaving that for the animals. So from the airport, our car was parked there, and I brought up Google Maps and checked the route home, and it said that there was an accident on the Monash. Look about here. And looking at that, and I was very conscious of this happening at the time because I'd talked about analogies like this in the past, and I'd talked about, you know, a new pathway is like choosing to take the off the beaten track road that you've still got to machete things out of the way rather than nice smooth freeway, all that kind of thing. But this, I actually went, okay, no, wait, this is interesting. Kind of sad this is what my brain was doing on no sleep, that this is where it goes. It's interesting because I wanted the more familiar. I really desperately wanted the more familiar. This was going to take us nearly 20 minutes extra, but the thought of doing this, which I still was not as comfortable with, I was not as familiar with, that just felt like too much hard work. I did not feel comfortable doing it. And I spoke to my husband and I said, all right, this one's probably going to take us another 10, 20 minutes extra. But I think tonight, given that I'm crazy tired, my head's not really doing its best work, I think I need to go with the familiar rather than the slightly quicker and new pathway. So that's what we did. And we got home, it was 10 minutes extra. The accident was clearing by the time we got there. It worked out very nicely. And the dogs and cats were very happy to see us. But it always stuck out for me then as just this perfect example of even once this new pathway is in place, even once this new pathway is relatively well used, relatively well understood, sometimes we just fall back on the old one. Sometimes we choose to go back on the old one. Obviously, in my case, it was, the Monash and not substance abuse or something like that. But I actually find this really helpful when discussing those types of relapses. And I've used it just this week with someone who's had a relapse, that it's still there. It's still really comfortable. It's still really familiar. And when we're really tired and really stressed and just don't have anything left to give, we will sometimes choose the familiar, even if there's a cost associated with it. Doesn't make us a bad person. That's had a lot of time to build up and get comfortable and get familiar with. So that's my little introduction to new neural networks. There we go. I don't know why I didn't think about that one. So, all right, new neural networks. I get my alliteration happening again. Excellent. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will be posting some of the little graphics that I've done up for this one later on today. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday and Valentine's Day, and I will see you tomorrow for the live Q&A at 4 o'clock. Bye.